Plus Racing Adventures is the long-standing iRacing league for the long-standing drivers, all of our drivers today, 60 years of age or over, and what they show us in this league, round after round, season after season, now over 20 seasons of 60 Plus Racing Adventures, is that age is no barrier to enthusiasm in racing and to great competition on the iRacing platform. And we've come to you today from the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit for 2 races coming up here on RaceSpotTV. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm David Haynes and I'm joined by Will Chadwick. We've got Connery Maddock on the production as well. Will, we think of sim racing and we think of, very young, youthful people like you and also me to a slightly lesser extent. But it really doesn't need to be that way. There are a lot of people out there with great passion for racing that goes back decades and decades and decades. And in fact, even the iRacing platform now goes back a decade and a half. There are some folks out there, and this is the league for them, that are 60 years of age or over, and they show us that great racing can be had for everyone.
Yeah, absolutely. I know we were talking a lot before this broadcast about this league and how great it is to have, everyone involved with inside motorsport and with inside sim racing, because, at the end of the day, everyone's included, everyone's welcome, and it's just great to see everyone in the same place with nice, respectful racing.
So let's look then at this season of 60 Plus Racing Adventures. If you were here with us on March 16 on RaceSpotTV, you would have seen the live broadcast, the 2 races from the Nürburgring Nordschleife. What a famous and intimidating track that is. Well, they've been to Road America, they've been to the Richmond International Raceway Oval, they've been to Long Beach, Zandvoort GP, and here we are, round 6 at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. So in the lower lying areas from Nordschleife, but that's where we are in the middle of the season here. So they're going to go on to Milwaukee, Summit Point, Indy Road Course, Spa-Francorchamps Mosport, and then we're going to broadcast the season finale at Watkins Glen on June 1st here on RaceSpotTV. So then, halfway through the championship, where are we? Well, Russ Addy leads the way, 6 points ahead of Barry Hills, from Bruce Poole, John Morgan, Eugene Clark, and Douglas Beasley tied on 152 points there. Then Leif Hellberg, John Hay, Robert Love, Randy Schumacher, Peter Hellstrom, and Gene Moore is our top 12 at the moment. Season 22. This is a championship that's got some legs underneath it and showing no signs of stopping either. But a little bit about the history of it. Stefan Röstgen is your all-time most championships winning driver with 8, ahead of Donald Fitterer, Jos van der Ven, and Ragnar Wisloff, who all have 2. Across your last 5 seasons, Ragnar Wisloff is the reigning champion from John Morgan and Steve Greenwood. Ragnar Wisloff with his first championship in season 18, and Donald Fitterer taking his second in season 17. Well, qualifying, I think, is just wrapping up ahead of race number 1, and it's an interesting race format here in 60 Plus Racing Adventures. We have 2 races, but the championship result is the driver's best of the 2 races, so they get to drop one or the other, and that means that, sure, you want to get a good result in race number 1, but if you don't, it's not the end of the world. So the qualifying standings are on the timing column there, Will. And Douglas Beasley doesn't look like he's got one yet, but he has time to put one to the board.
Yeah, so we're seeing the conclusion now of the qualifying session. Just under a minute left before we get through to the racing. We've got Wisloff on pole, followed by Stump and Fitterer. I'll make sure I butcher everyone's name, and I apologise for that. But yeah, we're just seeing some people finish up maybe the laps here, maybe just getting a bit of an extra practice in before the race here today.
So Ragnar Wisloff, the defending champion, but not at the top of the points, is at the top of the qualifying at the moment, and it's pretty close there with Paul Stump, Donald Fitterer, John Morgan, Russ Addy, all pretty regular competitors at the pointy end here in 60 Plus Racing Adventures. I see 28 drivers in this Indy Pro 2000 open wheeler that's been the car of choice in the road category of 60 Plus Racing Adventures ever since it came out. We're about to tick over qualifying. We'll run through that full grid and the drivers will get ready for race number 1, 16 laps of a rolling start. That grid, Ragnar Wisloff on pole, sharing the front row with Paul Stump, Donald Federer and John Morgan on row 2, and Russ Addy and Barry Hills on row 3. Behind them then Randy Shoemaker and Leif Hellberg, Greg Garris, Gerhardus Jorrison, Mike McCormick, and Marcellus Roining is the top 12, Will.
Followed by Jack Turner on in 13th place, JC Hay, Eric Block, Bruce Poole, Douglas Beasley, and Peter Hallstrom. Following on, 19th position we have Ian Wilson, 20th place Richard Coulomb, Eugene Clark, Bob Kern, Jerry Kerr, Wendell Lowe, following up in 24th place. And on the final road of the grid, we've got Carl Bogle, Farns Brink, Robert Love, and Joel Martin.
So 25 of the 28 drivers with qualifying times there, and just those back three of Franz Brink, Robert Love, and Joel Martin without a time. But just to touch on that qualifying format that we witnessed before, it was a 10-minute session, but the drivers are only allowed 2 laps. And I'm thinking here on this Grand Prix circuit, especially that final chicane, the track limits and the curbing there, particularly tough. There is a few ways that you can go about trying to set a qualifying time, and after 2 laps not have one stick to the timing tower, including the track limits in a couple of places, potentially including a spin on a lap or the other. But that final chicane here before the hairpin in the final sector of the Grand Prix circuit, rather notorious, whether it's the sports car chicane, whether it's the GP chicane, both of them either, well, one very fast with difficult track limits, and the other very tight with very aggressive curbs and difficult track limits. So the pace car starts pulling the field away. 28 beautiful, beautiful cars. Ragnar Wisloff, you see there in the 30, a little metallic, a little blue and white. He's got Paul Stump, very fierce driver, who will be sharing the front row with him for race number 1.
Yeah, as we see the cars come through to that notorious chicane, as you said, very difficult to nail, especially in a Formula car, as they're not always the kindest over the bumps. But yeah, we're just coming through to the end of our very short formation lap as the pace car pulls in to the pit lane.
Great view of that chicane, and I think Ragnar Wisloff is almost ready to get them going. He's pretty aggressive. You see that final sector there is a challenging part of the track. Ragnar Wisloff preempting the green flag a little bit to lead them down towards turn 1, and that's also a difficult part of the circuit. Downhill, very sharp braking zone, and they always start these races on quite cold tyres. Looks like Federer on the inside of the second row has had a good start there as well. So for Paul Stump on the outside of the first row, cutting back then, battling second and third here, all letting Ragnar Wisloff get away. Most everyone cleanly through turn number 1. Oh, right, as I say that, Paul Stump's had a lock-up, had a half spin, and they're checking up through the arena section here. Cold tyres is what everyone starts on, and they are really difficult on these slick tyres.
Yeah, and we've seen a few of the championship contenders caught up in that. We saw Russ Addy get caught up, Paul Stump, and it's just really unfortunate, as you say, on the cold tyres. Just losing the rear end, managing to catch it, but the others just struggling to react behind. And unfortunately, we're having a little incident there. As we see a replay, they went side by side through the second corner, giving them much respect. And as you see, just going in here, just getting the rear going round and just saving it. But it's so hard to react when you're so close behind, travelling at the speeds that these Formula cars can do. And yeah, it's really unfortunate for people who got caught up in that incident.
Yeah, behind him, I think Russ Addy and Barry Hills almost end up interlocked with each other as Barry Hills tried to avoid spearing into the half-spun car. For Ragnar Wisloff, he now has a pretty handy little lead. Donald Federer is up in a second. John Morgan now up in a third for the moment. Randy Shoemaker and Leif Hellberg both gaining positions from that as they went past Barry Hills, they went past Russ Addy, and they got past Paul Stump as well. So on this opening lap, for those drivers, a handful of positions gained. First time navigating through that precarious chicane at the end of the lap. And 15 more laps to go.
Yeah, I think it's important to note that we saw Leif Hellberg make up, I think, 4 places there on the opening lap, which is a really good effort. As he comes under attack, maybe from the car behind. Not
I think
quite.
he got around Shoemake in that final sector there as well, so he's having a pretty ripping start. He's gained 3 positions from other drivers' misfortune and now made a pass on Shoemake. You can see Gerhardus Jorrison and Marcel Sproening are right there as well. Hellberg started 8th on the grid, running 4th at the moment, and he's looking pretty good out of the box. These drivers will be familiar every race, every round, that the tyres for the opening lap or two are difficult. It's the same for every race, it's the same for every qualifying session, but when you're in the heat of that battle, it's a tough thing to hold back when you know where the ultimate performance of the car is in a run, but not necessarily at the drop of the green flag.
Yeah, it's all about bringing those core tyre temperatures in. You know, it's rather easy to get the surface tyre temps in the tyre, but you know, it's all about bringing the core tyre temperature up, the canvas of the tyre, and making sure you get, you know, maximum grip out of these tyres and kind of keeping them alive across the stint, and yeah, like we say, having maximum grip available.
Lovely roll hoop view of Randy Shoemake, shows all the gears that he's going through, shows the wheel movement as well. And he's in position to pick up a pretty powerful slipstream, something these cars have. Once you get into 5th and 6th gear, is he going to look to the inside at what has got to be a pretty big braking zone? My goodness, they got close there. Shoemake sneaks his nose and his front wing through down the inside, and I don't think there's much defending that around the outside in such a tight corner. What it has done is caused a check-up immediately behind them. Jorrison, I think, and Broining takes the opportunity to get past Jorrison, and now Greg Garrison and Mike McCormick are right there as well. Very tight at the back of the top 10.
Yeah, it's a good battle we have here for 5th place as they're coming down into turn 1, the fastest part of the track, cars reaching upwards of 235 kilometers an hour, as they all make their way through now onto the 3rd lap here.
Mercedes Arena in this kind of car always offers an opportunity for a little bit of a cutback. Douglas Beasley has got to get his car pointing the right way in turn number 1. That drop away right at the apex there can make the rear of the car get loose. I hope it was just a little error and nothing malicious here. As see the replay for Douglas Beasley. Little kink down towards the big braking zone at turn 1, and I think he's just outbroken himself a little bit. Tight right to the apex with the bollard there, and the rear gets loose on the transition.
Yeah, like you say, with the drop away at the track and just the way it goes, it's very easy just to take a little bit too much speed in, go down the dip, and the rear just swing right round on you. It's actually amazing sometimes how little rear grip these cars can have. You know, 245 horsepower, I believe, from the master engines, and obviously all the aero devices desperately trying to stick you to the road. But yeah, it's amazing how loose they can be, and they are a real challenge to drive here on the iRacing platform.
The car that's sort of your North American equivalent to Formula 3. It's the step below Indy Lights, the step below Indy car. Pretty good on the brakes, it seems. That is, I always think of turn 1 as the big overtaking opportunity around this track. Oh no! That is an out-braking opportunity. 2 cars there. Greg Garris with some damage. And who ran over his rear wing?
Watching a replay here, as you see the 2 cars battling ahead into the chicane, always going to cause a massive slowdown when you go too wide through there. You know, the cars are going to bunch up together, and you see him look towards the inside. Oh, just misjudges the braking. And gets over the rear there. Wheel-to-wheel contact is always a problem in Formula cars, and you see that sort of incident we've just seen. And another issue for maybe Douglas Beasley here.
But Beasley carries on after that spin we saw from him a little bit earlier. Recapping then, pole sitter Ragnar Wisloff off to a pretty good start. Joel Fitter and John Morgan could contest who stands where on the podium. They're not all together that far away from Randy Shoemake and Leif Hellberg, who again mentioned 2 big winners in the opening lap there. Who's a big winner overall? Well, Marcel Sproening is one, He's come from 12th on the grid to be running in 6th at the moment. There's some battling around him, some battling a little bit further back here as well. JC Hay, Peter Hellstrom and Greg Garris. Garris continuing after that contact that we saw. This is where he's rejoined behind JC Hay, Club Ohio, and Peter Hellstrom, Club Scandinavia.
Amazing to see all the nationalities here across this grid. And the battles across the pack. Obviously, we've got this battle for 11th here. The 89 car leading it by a comfortable 7/10, but we may see a battle for 12th here with Greg Garris only 2 tenths behind into the chicane. Getting it nice and slowed down, making sure you're hitting your apexes, making sure you don't get on the power too soon, looping the car around. Just kind of focusing on each corner at a time. See them come now.
Is it amazing to you that this Greg Garris car looks as clean as it does after what we just saw not long ago?
I would say that there's some magic powers of iRacing protection potentially on Greg Garris's car, but if it looks fine to us, he may still be able to get a decent result from this race. Of course, you know, mentioning the fact that as we go around the outside.
Yeah, trying to get clever through the arena, isn't he? Good cut back through turn number 1, round the outside of 2, and then breaking deep into that corner, and he's through and ahead.
Nice move there from Greg. Yeah, like we were saying, if the car's clean and, you know, relatively damageless somehow, I think noticing from my personal view, I can see a little bit of front wing damage, but you know, it might not be affecting him too much, especially because of the severity of the crash. If we watch a replay here, lower positions in the mid-20s. Any contact, just a bit of good battling so far as they go through turn 1 into turn 2, still side by side.
Armstrong himself just gotten a bit too greedy on the power, I think, through turn number 2 there.
Just unlucky as, yeah, like you said. I said that they've got rather rear limited traction at times, and it is just very easy just to step on that throttle a little bit too hard and to loop around, unfortunately.
It's very aggressive power delivery if you've driven these cars as well. They are so responsive as to maybe be a little bit snappy. Not gargantuan amounts of power, but when you ask for it, you get all of it.
Oh, for sure. I think, you know, thinking in total 245 horsepower compared to some of the GT cars we see doesn't sound a lot, but it's important to mention that these cars only weigh 500 kilos without driver and fuel, probably around about 600 when you've got the fuel and driver on board. And yeah, they're very, very light cars, you know, half the weight of a modern GT3 car. So you can see that they've got a lot of punch to them, and although they're being like the Formula 3 equivalent, they still are very, very fast around the lap here.
Out of those slow corners, there's just no downforce and no weight on those tyres as you ask for the power. Ian Wilson got, I think, a little lucky with that one in turn number 1. Look how close some of the drivers behind came to almost tagging him in turn number 1. Again, a big slowing. Rear wants to get away from you, and then you factor in that elevation change. Oh. New Nomex undergarments there?
Potentially, yeah. Like you said, just took a bit too much speed in there, and it was unfortunate to go around on him. As we are looking at the battle for 6, you know, we mentioned that Royning had made up quite a few positions already in this race, up from 12th where he started on the grid, followed by the driver that joined him on that row of the grid, the 11th place grid driver of Mike McCormack, who is chasing him down. 6 tenths is the gap as we enter the chicane. You know, it's got to keep focused on the car ahead, as Royning got a really good run through the chicane there and managed to open that gap up a little bit. But yeah, like you say, these cars, you can see them squirming around. They're not easy to drive. Yeah, it provides a really good challenge for these drivers here today.
Another Club Texas driver, Randy Shoemake, looking a little defensive to Leif Hellberg. Right on board with Hellberg through this opening sector of the lap.
Get to see the steering inputs that Leif Hellberg is putting in here, you know, going through the gears. These cars redlining at 9,170 RPM. I think that sounded absolutely fabulous. And yeah, getting through the rather short sequential gearbox. Of course, no clutch required to change through the gears here, just to pull away. And yeah, like you said, the tow effect is really quite strong in these cars. You know, they're being raced on ovals as well as road courses. You know, as we see the driver ahead, Randy Schumacher, make a small mistake into the hairpin. It's going to leave him potentially vulnerable through the Schumacher S's and through to later on in the lap.
I think you almost get away with the way the banking is. Oh no, Leif Hellberg's not going to get away with that. He's caught a little bit of the curbing. It's unsettled the car, and he's not been able to save it before he finds the wall. We were on board live for that, and you saw how easily he can get away from you. You're just pushing, trying to catch the driver in front. He's had a good run up through these climbing S's here, the Schumacher S's, and then to this next corner, the car just slides away from you a little bit. You get just a kiss of that curb and the AstroTurf and the painted concrete on the exit, and before you know it, you've gone from in control and on the attack to in the wall that easily.
Absolutely, you mentioned it there, just got up on the curbing and that ultimately causing the car just losing traction. You know, we're talking about how real limited the grip is in these cars, and as you can see, it can all end in tears when you end up in the barrier. But there will be a second chance in the second race today, where we'll have a new qualifying session and another 16-lap race where you can potentially get another good result. So it's not all over here tonight for Leif Hellberg. I forget, as we watch the battle for second here.
Yeah, Dolph Fitter and John Morgan, inseparable, almost all race long. Coming up to part of the track that we saw that drama earlier for Leif Hellberg, and I think that's one of those curves you either want to stay off it or jump across it. You don't want to be caught Tony Hawk pro skatering it there.
No, absolutely. I think it's very easy to grind out these cars on the curbs. You know, obviously they don't have a very large ground clearance, very, very low cars. So, you know, you don't want to be straddling curb. You can very, very quickly find yourself having no grip whatsoever as your tyres aren't making contact with the ground. But like you said, we're seeing Ragnar Wilsloff just really command an advantage at the front of this field, and you know, we're seeing John Morgan and Donald Fittler almost kind of accepting that they're maybe not going to catch Wisloff at this stage of the race, and trying to focus on the battle with each other. Like I said before, hitting the marks, taking each corner at a time.
It's funny, at the end of lap number 1, Ragnar Wisloff had a 2.5 second lead, and it's 3.3 now. It's just kind of stayed there all this time so far, and drivers have battled somewhat behind him. He's just held on to that lead in the opening race.
I think that the start that Wisloff got and how much of a gap he was able to pull down into turn 1 and the incidents we saw just enabled him to break that toe, able to kind of run his own race and work to his own pace and not have to like stress himself out too much about the cars behind, which has really benefited him here in this first race today.
Paul Stump doesn't think his race is over. He keeps fighting. Up to 13th now. You just saw him get past Richard Coulomb, and there's a group of cars there, Douglas Beasley, Bob Kern, Eugene Clark, etc., that I think he's worked his way there around. His teammate, who's not racing today, Steve Greenwood, in the RaceSpotTV YouTube chat at the minute, though, cheering on Paul Stump. Cheering him on a little harder before the drop of that green flag, but hopefully he's still with us. And race 2, again, a completely clean slate. Paul Stump has shown a lot of resilience and a fair chunk of speed in qualifying and in the race so far.
Yeah, like you said, the car doesn't look to be that damaged, if damaged at all, for Paul Stump's car. So he continues to fight his way.
Well, I didn't think he got touched at all. He just spun,
Yeah.
didn't he? And
I thought there might have been some rear contact maybe with the cars behind, but maybe not. Like you said.
I think it's those other two of Barry Hills and Russ Addy who tangled with each other, avoiding him, and didn't really make any contact at all that I remember with Stump.
Yeah, so it's just really a time loss then. So, just making sure you can fight back through the pack, onto the back of the 11th place battle, I believe now. As we watch the 177 car of John Morgan fighting for that second position.
Oh, you can't stop Paul Stump, can you? He's caught the next group. He's down the inside of the both of them, and he's into 11th place now, moving ahead of Peter Holstrom and JC Hay. A lot to prove, potentially. Very gutsy move, but a well done one too. Look at him trying to take this late apex through the final corner.
Yeah, using a lot of the exit curbing there as we went onto main straight, maximising his speed out, getting the slipstream from both the cars, saying, I don't care that you're overtaking, I'm going to make this 3 wide, commanding his position on the inside, getting the braking done perfectly as he hits the apex, and bang, you're up 2 positions.
He'll want us to play that replay more than once, I think. He'll want us to play that replay, not the lap 1 replay, but that was, I think, the cleanest you could make a 3 wide pass. He got all the way to the inside, he braked just right for the apex and didn't overshoot. There's nothing anyone else can do if you're with good speed down the inside and just nail your braking. So here's your second and third again, because all race long it just seems John Morgan has been in the shadow here of Donald Fitterer. Fitterer always able to see Ragnar Wisloff in the lead. It's still just 3.3 seconds or so. Morgan can be a pretty calculating customer in this kind of situation. They're battling down in towards turn number 1 behind him though, as McCormick feels the need to defend Jack Turner. Bruce put watches on. Everyone's had to be so careful of that drop at the apex of turn number 1.
Yeah, like you said, just holding a little bit of a defensive line, just kind of warning them off. You could put it up the inside, but I don't want you to. Let's just keep going at the minute. With 5 laps left in this race, just holding those defensive lines, trying to keep his position. 6th place here for Mike McCormack. 4 seconds.
Got a bit loose right behind him there then.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, sorry, I missed that. Just having a little look through my personal thing, but yeah. It was a big slide, a very, very good save actually, just looking back on my replay, just on the power like we said, these cars being rather rear limited. But it's turned into a battle for 2 here at the minute, for the 6th place. Jack Turner still harrying Mike McCormack as he goes to the outside here, through the Schumacher S's. Can he pull it off? Both drivers giving plenty of space, not quite able to do it. That would have been a contender for move of the race for sure.
And if he'd been able to do it, it would have been because Mike McCormack was also very generous there as well.
But like you say, they're just giving a lot of racing room, a lot of respect here between the drivers. It's really good to see. But there has been no... Oh! Is that a battle for second?
Oh, Douglas Beasley, Richard Coulomb are tied together. Everyone tries to avoid. I think Ian Wilson took to the gravel there. Someone else just clipped them. This is one of those occasions where a little thing becomes a big thing. For Richard Coulomb, he lights them up, and then they are tangled. Who? Oh, another super close call for Russ Addy. No, not Russ Addy. I
think it might have been Russ Addy there.
I think Barry Hills also had a super close call to the other side.
Like you said, just Beasley not really able to go anywhere once that spin happened. It happened straight in front of you. There's only so much you can do, and yeah, just getting tangled up in between each other. The other driver's doing an excellent job of avoiding any further contact. But And like you say, just quite unlucky with the timing of that one at least for Beasley.
McCormick's still got to defend from Jack Turner. Bruce Poole is caught back up after getting a little too trigger happy with the throttle.
All while they fight, does Eric Block begin to catch as well into this battle? Potentially could be so. Last time running rather a large chunk faster than these drivers ahead, mainly because of the battling we saw. A little bit of an advantage McCormack's been able to stretch out on this lap as we go on to the final section up towards the chicane. 5/10 is the advantage now. Bringing it down, like we said, the slipstream advantage being very powerful. Heading to that tricky chicane, hitting your marks, trying to not get over those curbs. Very, very close battle between the three of them here. Want to keep focused on the car ahead. Cormac stretching his advantage again.
Bruce Poole's got to be the one to watch here then. He squared it off very well there. And towards turn number 1, not as close.
Sits back and abides his time. Playing the long game here, 3 laps to go. Does Bruce Poole know something we don't? Is he biding his time? Does he want to make that move on the last lap? Maybe thinks that Jack Turner has the pace to catch the car and pass the car ahead. Maybe even fight and capitalise when both of them are slow. Really got a race plan here.
It's like a slipstream train here, isn't it? Because Bruce Poole can't attack Jack Turner how he'd like, because Turner is slipstreaming off of Mike McCormick, and McCormick seems to have a lot of consistency even if he doesn't have outright pace here. And so again, it's Turner on the attack, leaving Poole behind.
Towards the inside, there's going to be no defence from McCormack. Braking early. McCormack maybe sending it in a little bit hard. Getting it stopped though. And yet again, just having that gap be just about big enough as we go on to these straights. Could be a chance here though into the chicane. Not as long as straight as you may originally think. Only a slightly defensive line. Again, not close enough for Jack Turner. Will time run out as he runs wide? Oh, that was so close. Between all of them there, how did they avoid contact with each other? Wow, that was really good avoidance from both drivers.
I'm not 100% sure that they did. And
I think they might have just avoided it.
Bailed in a little hot. Checked up Turner at the apex, and then of course Bruce Poole right there as well. Eric Block is coming towards them. The way they keep battling like this.
Yeah, it does look like Bruce Poole is biding his time. Okay, as we watch a replay here, you were just talking about it. Did they all avoid each other? Let's have a little look on this replay. Very, very close between the two cars, but Bruce Poole does manage to avoid contact there. You can see the little puff of smoke as he stamps on the brake pedal just to avoid it. Does Bruce Poole want to make a move here? He's been very kind to Jack Turner. He's let him have his time. At what point does Bruce Poole decide that enough is enough? I need to make this place, and then try and maybe get McCormack before the end.
Well, you'd hope before Eric Block gets there. They've lost a second and 2 seconds and a second across the handful of the last laps. The way they've been battling each other, and Eric Block has been very consistently in the 154s, encroaching on them. Laps count down though.
Certainly applying the pressure on this fight that we did see for 6th. It's now for 7th as McCormack has managed to stretch nearly a 2-second advantage over Turner. Block certainly, by closing up to this group, is making Bruce Poole think twice about whether he should stay behind, whether he should make his move now. Will it be something he thinks about doing on to the penultimate lap here of the race? Trying to keep close through the chicane. 4/10 back is the gap as it stands, closing to 3 as we come round the final corner. Patient on the power, using all of the exit curve there from Bruce Poole. This could be the time that he might attack. Let's see. Does he make his move now? Still sitting there, it looks like. It looks like he's just biding his time. Still sitting there. Clearly knows what he wants to do.
Oh, block! In too hot. Was braking very deep. You saw how close he was getting, and he's lost the rears on the way in. There goes some of his good progress. Another one of the great vintage liveries you see from time to time. That's got to be Wolf Racing 76, I think. A little bit before my time, to be honest with you. Still finds himself just ahead of Paul Stump and Greg Garris, who are two very, very quick drivers. The opportunity arrived for Block and just overcooked it a little bit in towards that turn number 1.
I believe, actually talking about it, Paul Stump has got Greg Garris. Into turn 1 this lap. Paul Stump made the move on Greg Garris, so his charge continues up to 10th. He can potentially get 9th here for Paul Stump, despite his incident at turn 1. As we look towards the battle for 16th, we've got Eugene Clark and Bob Curtin fighting over 16th place here. Gap just over half a second as we go into the hairpin. A little bit wide there as we... Oh, and we see a spinner. Oh.
Barry Hill flipping it around at the hairpin there, and the two drivers we were following get a couple extra positions. Ragnar Wisloff has started the final lap of the race. Dolph Federer and John Morgan still second and third, as it feels like it has been this entire time, for just one more lap of the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit, Grand Prix layout for race number 1 of 2 in 60 plus racing adventures today. The other drivers, the other battles we're going to follow on the final lap here. Jack Turner and Bruce Poole. Surely this is the opportunity for Bruce Poole, and he's not close enough. Eric Block, after that half spin earlier, vulnerable to Paul Stump on the final lap here. Stump is down the inside, very well measured, very well controlled. Stump back up into 9th.
Like we said, on his charge, managed to get 9th place as we go on to the final lap. Definitely a great drive back through the field from Paul Stump, and also some very, very clean moves too. We now look towards, I think that's the battle for 2nd. Yes, it is. Kind of remained at about 6 to 8 tenths his entire race. I don't think John Morgan is going to be close enough in order to make anything happen here.
No, definitely doesn't look like it. Ragnar Wisloff, your pole sitter, your reigning champion, one of the winningest drivers of this 60 plus Racing Ventures Indy Pro 2000 era, looking towards another win. Federer and Morgan, who started second row of the grid, have run in that order almost all race long as well. And for race 1 at the Grand Prix Strecker, Pole lead every lap, and the race win for Ragnar Wisloff, domineering fashion here on the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit.
Yeah, commanding win there for Wisloff. Controlled the gap for the entirety of the race. Very, very well driven. So we're looking at the battle for 7th. Does Bruce Poole make his move? Doesn't look to be close enough unless of a mistake here for Jack Turner. 3 tenths, getting lower than that, maybe towards 2 on through the final corner, but it doesn't look like it's going to be enough. Jack Turner's going to claim 7th position here. And Bruce Poole in a nice P8. Paul Stump does complete that move on the final lap and gets his 9th position, as we see Eric Block coming home in 10th position. Greg Garris in 11th, and as we see here, a battle for 14th place, very, very close through the final section there.
Eugene Clark is going to be able to outbreak JC Hay. Got to worry about Bob Kern right there as well, and close as they were, no positions change hands in that final sector for 14th, 15th and 16th. Still, very strong contingent of cars remaining on the lead lap here that will battle all the way to the flag in race number 1. With Coulomb and Franz Brink among them. You've also got Jerry Kerr and Gerhardus Johansson not far behind them as well. The last couple of drivers on the lead lap in this race number 1. To hold on. Johansson started very well on the grid. Race number 1 doesn't reflect that qualifying performance. Luckily for him, there's another qualifying session in race number 2, not far away. That's everyone to the checkered flag. 60 Plus Racing Adventures race number 1. So then, let's look at the results. Ragnar Wisloff, what can be said about that kind of performance? We didn't spend a whole lot of time looking at him because he had a handy lead. Rarely a flutter at all. Strong qualifying performance into a strong race, and he bags a handful of points here. Fitterer and Morgan complete that podium, and those three do stand head and shoulders ahead of the rest. Randy Shoemake, Marcellus Broining, Mike McCormick, Jack Turner, Bruce Poole, Paul Stump recovering into the top 10, and Eric Block completing it. Greg Garris, Peter Hallstrom, Russ Addy, JC Hay, Eugene Clark, Bob Kern, Barry Hills, Ian Wilson, Douglas Beasley and Carl Bogle. Take note of the numbers because top to bottom you always find some really interesting racing here in 60 Plus Racing Adventures. It's not just about the win, but that three-way fight there, Hay, Clark and Kern, 14th, 15th, 16th. Just as exciting, just as important and just as engaging as for any other position. And then rounding out the results of race number 1, we saw Richard Coulomb, France Brink, Jerry Kerger, Hardis Jorrison, Robert Love and Leif Hellberg all scored on the lead lap. Okay, and Wendell Lowe, 8 laps back. Pretty clean, pretty tidy, all things together. With race number 1 complete, a little bit of a gap before race number 2 comes up, and it's the perfect opportunity to speak to solid handful of our 60 Plus Racing Adventures drivers. Normally you expect to see the winner, you expect to see the podium. I think we've got our top 4 all present. Let's go to the winner. It's Ragnar Wisloff. You'll be very accustomed to this RaceSpotTV booth now, Ragnar. Strong performance here at the Grand Prix layout of the Nürburgring.
Well, thank you, David. It's good to be back in on the Formula One tracks, wide and good to drive with good surface. It's good fun.
Certainly seems it. Good start and a good lead at the end of lap number 1, and that just seemed to snowball all the way through for you.
Yes. I think I was a bit lucky. I don't know if you saw that, but I lucked up quite hard into turn 1 on the first lap just after the start, and I thought, oh, expletive. That's that's it. But the others stayed behind, and I think there was some some things that happened in the first 2 or 3 laps, and suddenly I had a 2-second gap, and it's very hard to make that up.
How's the boat been treating you this year, Ragnar?
She's just in the water. She doesn't have a rig yet, but it will next Wednesday, actually. So I won't be racing next Wednesday, and I hope that's the start of a good season. It's been a very short spring today. We had 22 degrees, actually. So I think summer is already here.
That doesn't sound bad to me. Just make sure you're back at dock and back on terra firma for the final round of this season that will be broadcasting from Watkins Glen. Still another race coming up tonight. Are we going to see you again? Is it going to be another W for Wisloff?
No, I will certainly race. Whether I can repeat this result, we'll have to see. But I will do what I can within limits. We try to be gentlemen and not win at all costs.
A great motto, and it sounds like you had fun in race number 1, and we look forward to seeing you out on track again in race number 2 in not long, Ragnar.
Thanks, David. See you, maybe.
What a gentleman. We're more optimistic for him, I think, than he is, and let's get through all of these, Will, because it's great to speak to all of our drivers and their perspectives, and we'll just keep rattling it down top to bottom. Let's get Donald Fitterer in, and will have a word with him.
Donald, what a P2 there for you. You started. Oh, if I remember, where did you start on the grid now? I've already bottled it.
Third.
But you had a really good race. You got up from 7th position on the grid into 2nd, and you had a really close battle with John Morgan for the entire race. Talk us through what you were kind of feeling, how you were managing the gap, etc.
Hey, Will. Yeah, I hadn't practiced much this week, and my goal was just try not to make any mistakes. And luckily for me, I was a little bit faster than John in the right corners and down through the straight, so he really couldn't close on me and try to get by.
Yeah, so talk us through what you think of this track. It's very wide, very open, but there's a few problem areas. The dip in turn 1, you've got the big curbs at the final chicane. How do you find it driving around here in this this newer Pro Mazda?
Well, you really need to develop a rhythm, and there's a lot of camber in some of those corners, so you have to come in earlier in your apex than you think you might have to, and then get on the throttle earlier than you think you might have to. And I think that's where I was getting John, is I could gain a little bit of acceleration out of some of the corner exits that he just wasn't quite there, so he could never close on me at the point where he could try to pass.
Yeah, I think it looks like managing the rear tires and the tire temps, and also just making sure you're not spinning the wheels up too much in traction looks really important to achieving lap times and achieving consistency. And it really looked like you achieved that. Do you tend to, when you say you didn't practice much this week, did you find the initial, when we moved from Pro Mazdas, like I think maybe even 2 years ago now, did you find the initial transition hard, or did you prefer this car more than the previous generation?
I think the times I've won the championship, it was in this car, so I took to it rather quickly. And to be honest, I can't really remember the other car that much. This one, I felt like the rear end was never going to go out on me, and it was just a question of making sure I got on the throttle at 100% at the right moment, not too early and not too late.
Yeah. Absolutely, yeah, and we saw that in your result. You got a P2. Can you replicate? Can you go one better? Do you think you can try challenge Ragnar into the second race today? Do you think you can maybe grab a win? What do you feel?
Well, last week you guys weren't here, but Ragnar won the first race and I won the second, mainly because Ragnar wasn't in the second race.
Well, he said he'll be racing today, so he's going to be here. He wasn't overly confident about his chances. He said, it's going to be very close. But yeah, we wish you the best of luck into race 2, and thank you for coming for an interview.
Yeah, Ragnar's racing in a different postal code than the rest of us, and I can't keep up with him. And cheers, guys! Thanks for display or posting or displaying the race, and hopefully I'll see you in the second one.
No worries. Thank you very much.
Well, let's keep going. I'll put Donald Fitterer back where I found him. See if we can't grab third place finisher, John Morgan. You were right with Donald all race long there, all 16 laps it seemed, and just the opportunity didn't present itself to have a big go.
Nope, I was just keeping him company. Our pace was so close, and this track's tough. It's tough to find a good place to get a run on somebody and pass. So I was content to try to just kind of push him and wait for a small mistake, but he just didn't make any mistakes. So.
You can wait all day for that. That sometimes. Track looked like the sun was out, but the track temperature was pretty cool, and a car that might be deceptively sensitive to those track temperatures. How was the first lap when the tires were cold? How was the middle, and how was right at the end?
Yeah, we were just talking about this in the lobby, that this track is slick for a European track. It's a lot more like some of the tracks we run in Japan. So it is really slick. I think that's what caused, Paul was just a little overeager in that little bit of slipperiness that we find here, had him spinning out. But the car is sliding around. It's moving around almost the entire time. So as you adjust to it, the tires may be going off a little bit, but it's it's just something you got to adjust to. That and some of the nature of some of the corners cause that. But yeah, you're right. It is a little slipperier than what we usually see.
Sort of a lower coefficient surface. I think I've tried to use words that are above my pay grade on that one.
No, I
but
think
you definitely,
that's it. Yeah,
I should
think
back
that's
myself
it.
more often.
There you go. Yeah, I think that's right. I like I said, it feels, sometimes it feels like you're at Suzuka, which is also a notoriously kind of a slick track. So, um, yeah, it's something different about this track from you know some of the others that we run, where you feel like you just have more natural grip. But yeah, it's a fun track. It's very technical, and you got to pay attention everywhere. But it's just it's hard to find a place to pass. So it kind of leads to what we saw with me chasing Donald for 16 laps.
So what's the big takeaway then from race number one? What is going to be different in the way you drive or the way you approach race number two based on what you've learned from the cold hard facts of race number one?
Yeah, I think obviously it puts got to pay as much. You got to do as well as you can in qualifying, because obviously that played a big part in where I finished. And I think the start and the first few laps, you got to be heads up to the potential for somebody to just make that small mistake, and suddenly there's a car sideways in front of you. So I got bumped a little bit by all, but I think it bumped my side pod, and I didn't have any damage. The car was fine. But I think really that's the key to this place is you got to qualify well, and you got to pay attention that first lap.
Brilliant. Well, congratulations on your podium from race number one. Best of luck with that qualifying effort, then into the racing effort for race number two.
Thank you. All right, see you.
And let's keep going, because we've got one more. Randy Shoemake finished fourth, and I'll outbreak Will Chadwick on this one. Randy, how'd you go? One of the bigger movers that we've spoken to. I mean, Ragnar Wisloff qualified pole, finished first. Fitterer and Morgan qualified on the second row, and you've come from just a little bit deeper, seventh on the grid, and picked up some spots for that result.
Well, thank you, David. It was a privilege to be able to drive. I've been getting a lot of help from Ragnar, Russ Addy, Jack Turner, even practiced with Donald this morning, and gave me a lot of confidence for the race. And I got through the first 3 or 4 turns that had some calamity. Had a great battle with Lee for a few laps. But as most of my races end up, there's a 20-second gap between the person ahead of me and the one behind me. I drive a lot of races by myself.
Well, if there's 20 seconds in front of you, that can be a problem, but 20 seconds behind you means you've done something right, and it seems like from where you started on the grid, keeping your nose clean might have been the secret there.
Yes, sir. This is the first time we've been at this track. I really like it. It's difficult to pass, but we've enjoyed it and glad to be here. And I didn't mean I was 20 seconds behind the person in front of me. They're 4.8, but there's a 20-second gap from the person in front of me to the person behind me. And so I'm usually driving by myself. And like I said, stay clean. At that point, it's, don't drive over your head. I'm not catching the people in front of me and trying to hold off the ones behind me.
We'll look to find you right in the middle of the Randy window in race number two. But this is a track that can be deceptive in some of the difficulties that it presents. We saw Leif Hellberg in his battle with you just catch what looked like a pretty low, pretty flat curb wrong, and it sent him into the wall. Then there's some pretty nasty curbs at turn number one and in the final sector. So are there any particular landmines out there you had your focus on trying to be tidy with?
I think I only had one incident point, and it came at the chicane, which is difficult. We, like I said, I practiced with Donald earlier today, so got some practice. We actually went too wide through there cleanly, but I missed it, and that was my 1X on the first lap, and then the rest of the race was clean.
A noble effort, and I hope you can repeat it in race number two, and we'll look forward to seeing you there if we can.
Thank you, David. Before I go, I'd like to wish my granddaughter happy birthday. She celebrated her 5th birthday last Saturday, and my mother's birthday is next Sunday. So I love them both so much. Love my wife, and just hope they have wonderful days.
Beautiful, Randy, and best wishes to those members of your family. Thanks for sticking around to chat with us and bringing a little ray of sunshine here after race number 1 as we look forward to race number 2.
Thank you so much, David. Connery, William, hello. Have a great day, and thanks again for the broadcasting that you all do for us.
Thank you very much, Randy. Really appreciate it.
Right, well, thank you, Randy, for joining us. We'll take a break here on RaceSpotTV as we and the drivers gear up for race number 2. Again, a clean slate, a fresh qualifying session, and then another race. And there's plenty on the table for some drivers looking for a little bit of redemption in race number 2. Remember, our drivers take the best results from race 1 or race number 2. Think about those drivers who qualified well and raced well, but didn't get the results they wanted in race number 1. Think Paul Stump, Barry Hills, Johannes Jorrison, Leif Hellberg. Hopefully we'll see them in race number 2. What can they spring in the second outing that they will learn from the first time out? Break here on RaceSpotTV. David Haynes, Will Chadwick, and Connery Maddock producing. We'll be back shortly. Time for race number 2 here in 60 Plus Racing Adventures at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit. It's race number 2, but it is a clean slate, a brand new qualifying session, a brand new grid. Everyone starts 16 lap race, a fresh and clean, and of course it is the points result. This is the best result between race number 1 or race number 2 that the drivers carry forward in the championship at this critical halfway juncture in the 12-round season. So let us then look at this qualifying session for race number 2. Drivers on their outlaps at the moment, Will.
Yeah, getting themselves ready for qualifying, preparing their tyres, just getting them up to temperature. You see a little half spin there, that'll just be on the outlap. No one's started a lap yet. We're following the number 25 car of Donald Fittler. Spoke to him to see if he could maybe get higher up in the order, maybe break into trying to get a win as he starts his first lap. Looks like the second laps tend to be a little bit quicker than the first laps. We watch him come down into turn number 1. Nicely hits the apex using the outside. Gonna keep it tight around the first part. Opening up the corner to the outside. Holding it tight now into turn 3. Setting himself up for turn 4 as you see the roller coaster on the left. An actual roller coaster. Head down towards the turn 5 and 6.
Hey, the VIR roller coaster actually operates.
Do you know what? I can't remember that off memory, but a roller coaster is a roller coaster at the end of the day. I think they're both cool.
Sorry, you're doing so well, and I had to get a jab in there because the one here that's the amusement ride doesn't run anymore, had many great problems, whereas the corner called roller coaster at VIR, you can take every lap.
I mean, I think that does sound like a superior engineering achievement. But these laps look pretty good from Donald Fittler, disregarding the talk about roller coasters. Very clean, very tidy. But is it quick? Sometimes you see laps look really slow, but they be really quick. Sometimes you see laps look really on the edge, but they end up being really slow. So it's hard to tell. But he's definitely kept it all in check. Hit his apexes, and made sure he's got his braking markers nicely through the chicane. Doesn't get over any of those nasty curves as we're coming into the final corner now. Times we were seeing
Donald Fitterer's will be one of the first times in this qualifying session, and then you'll see a whole flurry of them go on through.
53.060. That matches. I actually believe that matches the second place time of the last car we saw. All
Stump to the top.
Sadie
spins it in 1. Starting his second lap, so I think that is the best Russ Addy is going to be able to do. 154-ish. Marcel Sproining. No time just yet there. Oh, so close. Ragnar Wislof's first time. 0.03 of a second short of Paul Stump. Looks like it could be very close at the top of qualifying again.
Wislof's messed up his second lap. Not going to be pole for Wisloff this time around. Had a moment coming off turn number 4. Paul Stump is still on his lap. Can he improve by any more? Donald Fittler as well. All very close and able to potentially grab pole here today. Don't count out anyone that may not have set a lap so far. There may be some other people on good laps. We've still got 4 minutes 45 seconds of this quali session to go. Marcellus Bräuning coming through. Seeing a lot of that outside. I'm not sure if that's an off track or not. Making sure he gets to the... Oh, looked quite slow off the exit there. Not sure if that's because he's got an off track or...
Well, I think the first lap didn't count for Bräuning there, so if he's got a problem again on the second lap, that's going to start you very deep in the field. Donald Fitterer, is he going to come around to improve on his lap? Bräuning is going to have no qualifying time, by the way. Donald Fitterer.
Oh!
Fractional improvement, and enough to send him to the top briefly. Paul Stump and Ragnar Wisloff and others still coming around. Stump to the pole.
Don't think Wisloff's going to improve. As I said, had that moment on his lap.
It's not going to count.
No. Stump with a time to go 1.5 tenths ahead of Whitler. Wisloff will only start 3rd or above. The runaway winner of the last race going to be starting off maximum 3rd position here. Can anyone else improve as we look towards Leif Heelberg as he's coming through the mid section of his lap towards the Schumacher S's? Flies a lock smoothly up into 5th gear. Keeping to the right hand side, aiming for his braking point. Down the gears, 4th, 3rd, holding 3rd. Going to hold 3rd again through this corner as we head now towards the tricky chicane, up into 4th, up into 5th. Not hitting that red line, matching his rev lights on the dash as we go up into 6th gear. Down to the final chicane. Apex number 1, a little bit over the curb, misses the right hand apex. What could be fast? I think he lost too much time. It's going to be interesting to see where this lap time places a little bit on the curb as we exit the final corner. Keep over to the line to it's blocking 7th position. I think. Yeah, am I right? Or maybe I'm right. Yeah. Looks like.
I don't think he did get an improvement on that one. Barry Hills was the only other driver
me off. Yeah, that's
on
my
a
bad.
flying lap.
Yeah,
Barry Hills went to 7th at a pretty similar time.
Yeah, that was my bad. But yeah, Hills to 7th. That's Russ Addy coming across the line. 2:02.2. That's definitely not going to be an improvement. Is there anyone else currently circulating?
No one who still has lap allowance, so there's a few still going. JC Hay, Peter Hallstrom, Bob Kern, and Russ Addy had completed his 2 flying laps and then kind of carried on for another in the absence of much else to do. There's that castle on top of the hill in the background there.
Who lives in that castle?
Judging by its state of repair, hopefully no one. I don't think that's a rentable property.
But I would live in that castle if you could, because it'd be pretty cool. Imagine just saying, "Oh yeah, I live in a castle." Pretty cool thing to say. And also overlooking the Nürburgring track, which makes it even cooler in my opinion.
Would you rather live in a tent in the middle of the Nordschleife or a castle in the middle of a swamp?
Any swamp or the swamp here at the Nordschleife?
No, I'm thinking a swamp in the middle of nowhere.
A tent in the middle near the Nordschleife. You can get to see all the cool test cars going around maybe. Very cool. I think it might be quite loud, but yeah, definitely a tent for me. I already live in a sim rig, so...
You think that castle's going to have much sound deadening built in?
I don't imagine
That
much.
thing's going to echo.
Yeah, probably. I don't imagine you'd want to record any commentary or audio work inside that building.
Meanwhile, our commentary is always very intense.
Exactly.
That's going to almost bring a wrap to qualifying on a smaller lap like this. The laps always run out before the time. It does earlier in this championship on the Nordschleife. It was the time that runs out before the laps do. So it's the sight that you may have seen in race number 1. All of our drivers gridding up for the rolling start, and this time Paul Stump has the pole position, shares that front row with Donald Federer. Ragnar Wisloff on that second row, John Morgan, who started on the second row in race number 1. So a very similar top 40 grid, but they've shaken them up just a bit. Randy Shoemaker and Greg Garris are 5th and 6th for a all-Texan third row. Barry Hills, Gerhardus Jorrison, Russ Addy, Mike McCormick, Leif Hellberg and Eric Block. Leif Hellberg is one of those drivers you might expect to have qualified or race a little higher than that, so keep an eye there. Will the rest of the grid.
Jack Turner and Bruce Hall operate the 13th and 14th positions. Douglas Beasley and JC Hay 15th and 16th. 17th and 18th is Ian Wilson and Peter Holstrom. Following on with 19th and 20th being Eugene Clark and Bob Kern. 21st, 22nd, Gene Moore and Carl Bogle. 23rd and 24th being Marcelo Bräuning, quite low down for him, obviously not getting the lap in, and Robert Love, 24th position. Running out the final row of the grid, 25th for Joel Martin and 26th for Jerry Kerr, both not setting a time here today.
There's our grid. Here they are on the back straight, ready for the truncated formation lap. Porsche safety car doesn't need to do a whole lot of work. We saw from race number 1 what a great start Ragnar Wisloff got off to. We'll stump. Mirror that. Just throws me for a bit of a loop that on a clockwise circuit, pole sitter sits in the right hand line, which is inverse to what our graphic had shown. Pole stump ready. Looking for some lap 1 redemption here as well.
Like you said, something to note, Randy Shomack starting higher up this time. Obviously we saw him make up 6 positions on the opening lap last time out. If he does that today, he'll be in first by the end of the first lap. But I guess we'll see what happens here as we wait for Paul Stump to command the field away. Pace car pulling into the pit lane. Paul Stump might have gone here.
I think Stump's pretty well gone. And again, the driver on the front row on the outside left hanging a little bit.
Oh, a bit of a stutter there for Paul Stump as he came out the final corner. Caused a few drivers to check up. Oh,
And he's pulling over and he's parking it. What on earth for your pole sitter? Donald Fitterer goes in through to the lead of the race, but he almost overshoots turn 1. Very, very squirrely moment for Randy Shoemaker, and he's going to drop back a handful of positions. Cold tyres lap number 1 proving problematic. I am so confused. What could have happened to Paul Stump there? Surely not.
Paul Stump has
Penalty
regained.
for trying to preempt the green.
I'm not sure. He's regained. He's re-got going as we're watching a battle further down as we see him here. I'm not sure what's happened though. He's lost a large chunk of time. Just, yeah, as you said, parks it at the side. Not sure if we see any issues here. Up into 4th gear. Also the right hand side. Looks very deliberate. And just pulls over. A very, very safe spot. Maybe an issue he had. I'm not quite sure what happened there, but it's going to be all to do again for Paul Stump, despite being on pole by over 1.5 tenths as we look towards our leaders. It's Fittler who is leading the pack now, followed by his good friend John Morgan. They spent all of last race together and may spend this race together as well. Ragnar Wisloff in 3rd place, followed by Greg Garris.
I think that's a very threatening place for Ragnar Wisloff to be. He's right in touch with the leaders, proved very pacey. Greg Garris overshoots the braking zone into the chicane, and Wisloff goes for pit lane. I've got to think something weird happened with that race start.
Fittler's pit lane as well.
Black flag. And there is Fitterer, Wisloff and Stump have all got black flags from that race start. I didn't see anything at the time that suggested it necessitated any automatic penalties off the race start or anything.
Do you think it could have been because they overtook the pace car before they reached the safety car line, which I believe is the start of the pit lane? That's the only thing I can think of potentially. I'm not sure on that one.
I mean, it's got to be that, isn't it? It's your top 3 from the grid who all had black flags. Paul Stump, Donald Fitterer, Ragnar Wisloff. John Morgan, who started 4th, now leads from Russ Addy and Greg Garris. So Stump has maybe misled them all a little bit. on that race start, he's been penalised. Those with him as well. Look at the location of the safety car. Look at the location of Paul's stump.
They do go rather early. I mean, all of them seem to be very far ahead. It depends where that line is defined for the pace car. Because if that were to be the pit lane entry, you'd suggest that it would be all of them almost getting a penalty. But it seems like because they went so early there, the top three have been penalised. And that's thrown a massive shake-up in this race. We've got a top three of John Morgan, Russ Addy and Greg Garris now. Russ Addy coming from 9th place on the grid. Second already in this race. And Leif Heelberg, where did he start? He started down in 11th place up to 4th. It's going to be a very interesting race, especially watching the faster drivers of Stump and others such.
Handful of cars spun, exiting the final corner for JC Hay. There's damage to multiple corners there. Marcel's Breuning is also around.
Trying to rejoin safely. Not sure we can get a replay of that. Let's see what happens. So we've got a bit of a cut-off here.
Starts here through the chicane. Breuning was offline. It's checked up those behind. And then JC Hay. Oh. Just that nasty wheel-to-wheel contact, isn't it?
Yeah, just quite unlucky because there's so many cars around there just trying to give everyone as much space as possible, and it's really unfortunate for those involved there. Luckily, they did some nicely careful rejoins and didn't end up taking anyone out with them. Watching from a different view here of Bob Kern, coming up the inside here, down into the final corner. He's staying nice to the inside. As you can see, they just make that contact. Oh, and he loses his front wing as well. That's going to be a big slowdown for Bob Kern if his front wing is really detached. I'm just going to check on my screen. Yeah, he has quite a bit of front wing damage, which will definitely be costing him a lot of time in this race now, as we now watch the battle for the lead.
Tyres will be warming up, pressure's coming up, drivers getting a little bit more confidence in the middle phase of the race before potentially the tyres get away from them towards the end. Track conditions very similar to that race number 1, so it's 21 Celsius on track. That is relatively cool for this amount of sunshine. And Morgan leads the way, Russ Addy right with him, 2 seconds then to Greg Garris, and then a gaggle. Hills, Hellberg, Jorrison all work their way around the final corner.
Fastest lap of the race.
Fastest lap of the race in his pursuit of the lead.
Yeah, something to note here, the humidity is sitting at 55% and wind's being quite low as well. It's quite nice conditions for racing here. As we watch upon this race, John Morgan famously was glued to the back of Donald Fittler in the last race, and he just couldn't quite make that move. We talked about him. He talked to us about how it was kind of hard to make the move, to get close enough to be able to kind of waiting for a mistake from Fittler. But now it's his job not to make a mistake. Can he hold down the fortress, hold the defensive lines, keep calm, and seal this win? He's got Russ Addy, the championship leader, behind him.
Cars like these are pretty flat out climbing up through the S's. Seeing you've got to be careful with some of the curbs approaching there. And behind them, Hellberg qualified 11th, still on the march. Picked up a couple positions and it's not enough yet. Terrorising Barry Hills for 4th. And it's closing up for the lead here too as well. You see that once you get to 5th, 6th gear, that slipstream gets pretty powerful. Russ Addy knows it's early goings in this race, and I think has just let that one go for the minute and is still setting up, sizing up John Morgan.
Yeah, I believe he said something over the radio chat to John. I couldn't quite pick out what it was, but he could be saying, look, let's just work together here. Let's make sure we build this gap to Greg Garris behind and then sort everything out later. If we fight now, we're going to make sure that more people are involved in this battle, and if we don't fight, we can guarantee a top 2 for the both of us, is what I assume he's trying to say. Which is very smart from Russ Addy, obviously thinking about his results for the championship. You know, taking his result from race 1 wasn't probably as good as he liked, considering his position in the championship. But he's just looking to consolidate that now as we move on to the 5th lap.
If you can grab a podium every round, that'll do pretty well for you. Ragnar Wisloff's second time through the pit lane in race number 2, an invert of the fortunes from race number 1. How on earth it looked almost like a stop and go there. Bogle and Ian Wilson, I think. Here. Around the outside goes the 76.
Yeah, just an update on Wisloff. He actually obtained some front wing damage on the end of lap 3 going into the chicane, and I think he's determined that damage is too much for him to continue as it is, whether he rejoins the race or decides to call it a day, considering he got that win in race 1.
So at this point in the race, this battle 4th, 5th, 6th, anyone who gets to the front of this and shows a little bit of speed could still be fighting for the podium. Greg Garris only 2.5 in front of them, and he's catching Russ Addy, and John Morgan's not getting away. So I still see easily 6 cars not just in contention for the podium, but potentially for the win here as well. Harry Hills has held on very well up until this point. Hellberg in place to have a dive into turn number 1 if he wants to. I think that's almost just covered off.
Yeah, Barry Hills being the only member of UK and Ireland group in this race, repping up the home country of where me and producer Connery Maddock live. So I think that he's our national favourite for me. So hopefully he can get hold on to this 4th position, and maybe if you can just pick up the pace, potentially benefit and get onto the podium, depending on what happens ahead of him.
It's only 4.5 seconds off the lead as well. Doesn't take a whole lot to lose 4.5 seconds. We saw that from some of the podium battles and other battles throughout race number 1 as well. Particularly trying to go side by side up through this section. Now that's not happening at all for any of the leaders yet, and you notice they were trying to stave off any silly games too early. Hellberg, that's not a place I thought I was going to see a pass, and it proves it's not one.
He looked to the inside, but he just couldn't get. Oh, he gets all over the gravel there. His engineers won't like him when he brings it back to the pit lane, and there's loads of gravel.
Not great line into that section, not great line off it.
No, but like you said, just looking to the inside. Barry Hills didn't seem to be phased though by him looking there. Maybe trying to kind of put him off, put himself in the mirrors. You know, make Barry Hills aware that he's there. You know, trying to force a little bit of a mistake potentially. It does certainly look like Leif Hilberg is really pushing to try and make this move on Barry Hills. Maybe he's got an aspiration of trying to get a bit further up towards Greg Garris, Russ Addy and John Morgan for your top 3 at the minute.
The longer this battle goes on, the further that top 3 seem like they get away though. Of course, we saw Greg Garris set the fastest lap of the race on that one as well, as he closed up to the top 2. He was a little wide. That's going to compromise you then into the right-hander, compromise your drive off. He's outside of the painted lines. Hellberg's got the nose in front, has to go round the outside here for 4th place. Nothing being given to him easily, and the 2 of them touch just a little bit as there's potentially some damage there. As Hellberg then tried to block off the apex, Hills fights back. This is the closest Johannes Jorgensen's ever been. Oh, they touch again.
Oh no. Oh, that's a really hard impact into the walls, fails there. I think they just... I'm not sure whether he had a little bit of damage. Let's have a look. So we have this first incident here where Barry Hills just gets caught out a little bit on the brakes and makes contact to the rear left suspension of Leif Hilberg. See them side by side into the hairpin, just comes across and it looks like a little bit of wheel-to-wheel contact, and yeah, maybe the throttle got stuck on from that, I'm not quite sure, but big impact, and hopefully is okay and taken to the medical centre afterwards. Just looks like Barry Hill's got caught out there. I did notice that he apologised over the radio, so there was no bad intentions. But yeah, it's interesting to see what happened down here into the head. Yeah. Any comments on that, David?
Sparingly few.
Yeah, it just looks to be a little bit of netcode contact, a little bit of contact between the rear left wheel, the rear right wheel of Hilberg and the left front of Hills, and as you can see, the high speed collision for Hilberg, and that renders him out the race, unfortunately.
Closing up for the top three, and McCormick and Eric Block have caught Yorison and Hills throughout all of what we just witnessed across a couple corners. So this for the lead, very little in it. John Morgan, shallow entries, hugs the curb all the way around. Russ Addy turning in a bit later, picking up a bit of a later apex. Greg Garris no longer holds the fastest lap of the race, but I think he's got the fastest lap of the race inside of the top 10 still. So he is looking like his pace is coming on very strong at this midpoint of the race. Again, Addy turning in later, taking a later apex, and then trying to carry speed down the straight to maybe be in position to attack here. As he looked any closer than this, he'll squeeze to the right-hand side of the road, almost bearing down too quickly. You want to have gotten to the left-hand side of the track, but he couldn't do it. He'll outbrake round the outside into the chicane. Garris, probably having seen that, now needs to also get in on this.
That is the championship leader taking the lead of this race, the lead of this meeting for the first time. You know, obviously we had a bit of a difficult race one, but Russ Addy is now to the lead. He's going to look to consolidate that, going to look to try and keep that position for the rest of the race here. We've got just 7 laps to go here, around about 15 minutes left in this race. And this battle for the top 3 continues to rage on.
McCormick also pulled off a move, got himself into 5th place. What was 4 cars pretty close together, spaced out a little bit back there. Some of our early casualties not giving up as they still continue to trouble the fastest lap board.
Yeah, Donald Fittler does look to be on a bit of a charge here. Obviously having to pit on lap 1 due to that penalty that he got from the potential start procedure infringement, into 12th position, and yeah, looking to get him towards that top 10, but he's going to need to set some good lap times here, which he is doing, in order to make his way up the field.
I think the lesson I'm going to hold on to is if you see the pole sitter go that early, just let them go.
Yeah, exactly. It just looks like it's one of those instances where you're trying to get going, you're trying to get the jump, but because you've not let the pace car go, and it's such a short outlap, so you don't have a lot of time to let the pace car go, it just ends up being, like you say, just getting a jump on the pace car and unfortunately getting a penalty.
Podium runners now 7.5 seconds clear of everyone else. Like Eric Block.
Ooh, what's
looping it, Block? Putting that power down. He was in a good spot there with McCormick and Barry Hills, and was up behind Barry Hills at this point, and the tighter line, the compromise line through the chicane, seeing him light those tyres up. So Bolt down the inside, trying to take that track position, and it's just clipping a little bit of that curb on a different line than you'd normally take. Loops him around very easy.
Yeah, and like you said, though, it was just, again, rear traction limited. These cars, looking like it's just getting on the power a little bit soon, and as soon as it's gone, it's gone. You know, these cars being mid-engined mid-engined, and you know, just as soon as the weight goes round, majority of the weight towards the rear of the car, can't really stop it. Not as bad as a Porsche Cup car, as we see a spin for Ragnar Wisloff.
He's been tapped around as he tried to make a maneuver. Gets past. Driver behind then outbrakes themselves and just helps Ragnar back around.
Yeah, Robert Love just caught him there, and we saw Robert Love have a
Call that a love tap?
a little bit of a love tap there. Like you say, it was very gentle, but as you say, just getting unsettled into that first corner, even the smallest bits of contact are able to put you right in. As we still see this amazing battle for the top 3 places here tonight. Ray John, as we say, you know, it's Rosati's not been able to extend this at margin. John Morgan is only 4/10 back. He may have a look into turn 1. I think he'll be a little bit too far back. He may just look to the inside just to get into Rosati's head, maybe. Force a mistake. And all this time, Greg Garris just sits pretty in 3rd, watches these two battle, and picks his opportunity to make the move when he decides it's best to do so.
I think you've got John Morgan in your mirrors. You just can't shake him. He's a shadow and a follower. We saw that all throughout race number 1. Didn't find himself in position to make a lot of passes, but it's very good at watching the lines of the driver in front and still being able to hit his own marks from those reference points. And now that he's been passed and put back into 2nd, still not letting Rosati get quite away. And the charging speed we saw from Greg Garris, how is that stalled out once he's caught these two? Surely he must also be biding his time at this moment in the race. Definitely looked to have a lot in hand compared to the two in front as he was catching them not long ago.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I think that just biding his time, we've seen this battle stay close now for the entirety of the 20 minutes we've had in this race so far. And I just think you've got to make your moves at the right time. It doesn't look like you're able to get away with the slipstream effect, potentially. You know, these drivers look very equally matched at the front. You know, they're all fairly close on times that they're able to set. Of course, John Morgan being the one that qualified the highest up on the grid, being 4th, whereas Garris 6th and Rosati 9th. But yeah, biding the time, staying in the slipstream, picking your opportunity to make the move at the right time as we head on to the 12th lap of 16 here tonight.
Garris 2/10 quicker than those in front that time. He's out a little wider in turn number 1, opens it up a little wider into 2, so he's covering more meters. I still like these lines from Garris.
Yeah, like you said, we're watching from Greg Garris's cockpit here, the T-Cam. They're probably made popular by anyone that's managed to watch that sport called Formula One. Not quite sure what it's about, but as we see, the T-Cam gives us a great opportunity to see the steering inputs of Greg Garris here, the gears that he's deciding to use for each corner. Doesn't look to be going into 1st, looks to be 2nd to be the gear of choice for low speed. You know, relatively short gearbox. You know, we're getting up through the gears relatively quickly as we head through the Schumacher S's up into 5th. And like you said, just biding his time. You know, he's going to have to make a move soon, because if John Morgan can't close up and make a move on Rosati, he's going to need to close up, make the move on Morgan, and then further pursue Addy towards the end of this race.
Still about a second to cover our top 3, but as you watched from Garris's perspective, you see that it is difficult to make a pass around here in the absence of a glaring mistake from the driver in front. All looked good from Garris's perspective, and he just wasn't catching car lengths, catching time to John Morgan. And I'm sure if you looked from Morgan forward at Addy, it'd be a very, very similar story for all in our top three.
Early on the brakes into turn 1 for Russ Addy. Looks to take probably a more conservative approach on the brakes into turn 1 here than the likes of John Morgan. But it's not really enough time loss to let Morgan kind of be able to make a move. He looks very confident through some of the fast corners. We watch the battle here. 7th place, Turner just starting to make the move on Poole as they go side by side through the arena complex, and Poole takes the position back as they continue to fight into turn 4, potentially a switch back on here, giving the room. Turner in the slipstream, only 1.5 tenths back. Can he make move? Backs out of it there, but yeah, some really good fighting all the way through the field here.
I think cutback was on for Turner there, but he just wasn't sure which way Bruce Poole was going after the corner, and I'm not sure Bruce Poole was entirely clear on it either. They are battling 7th and 8th here.
Through the Schumacher S as they go.
We learned Turner's not afraid of an unconventional move there or other places.
Yeah, Turner seems to be one of the drivers which is looking to risk it a little bit more, looking to make that bit more bold of a move, you know, from this meeting tonight, just looking at what type of moves he kind of tends to go for. He's going to be close here. He's going to be able to put his nose up the inside. Halfly defended a little bit from Bruce Poole. Up the inside for Turner. Equal on the brakes. Inside line for Turner. Gets the move done. But Poole will be able to respond here. If he keeps it close through this final corner, he will have another chance into turn 1. Good exit
Lines
from
through the hairpin that close out the lap, and even that shallower exit, I think Bruce Poole is still in place to be a little bit of a nuisance to Turner.
It looks like Poole's conceded that position now, unless he's able to see Turner make another mistake or be able to just kind of manufacture his way into a position where he's able to compromise Turner and make a move. Yeah, like we said, we saw Poole sit back in the last one. Maybe he's going to try and consolidate this 8th place here, as he's got a nice comfortable gap to Barry Hills in 9th place.
As they battle though, Hills was faster on the last lap, so he's got to be careful. Laps ticking down for the leaders, 2 as well. Still all underneath a second, still in the same order. As John Morgan minded the tyres as he got something more. He just gets a little bit of that curb that was Leif Hellberg's undoing in race number 1. Seems to get away with it, but wasn't quicker through that complex of corners than the driver in front or the driver behind.
Yeah, like we say, as we come down onto the final section of the 14th lap here of 16, we're getting on to crunch time. 2 laps to go in this race after this one. Someone's going to have to make a move soon, or we're not going to, you know, the win could slip away from either of these guys if they don't make the move now, especially for Greg Garris. Greg Garris has got to be thinking he needs to be on the attack now. He's going to have to make a move this lap on John Morgan if Morgan can't advance onto the back of Russ Addy if he wants to win this race.
Yeah, one that pace still definitely looks like it's the domain of Greg Garris, but once he's closed up to these two, he's not been able to make any indent into what looks like a Russ Addy versus John Morgan race win situation.
I think, like we said, it looks like he's just kind of set back, tried to let John Morgan and Russ Addy kind of battle out and make, you know, kind of open up an opportunity for Greg to pounce on these two. But as the laps go on here, as we only have 1.5 laps to go, it's looking less and less likely that is going to happen. So, you know, Greg Garris, he's 8 tenths back, so he's not going to really get a chance here. Could we see these lot finish in this order that they have been since Russ Addy made that move for the lead?
Thank you for saying that.
I think it's an interesting one because we've seen the gaps ebb and flow across these laps, and I think anyone that nails a sector, nails a lap here, could still be in with an opportunity of winning the race. As we head now around the final corner on to the final lap. Your championship leader leading the halfway stage of this season, the halfway stage of this season, and onto the final lap he goes now.
Yeah, reasonable points result out of race number 1, but looking to go one better in race number 2. Russ Addy leading the way. A win would be a great result for him as he tries to continue a championship charge. John Morgan, since being passed, has not disappeared, and Greg Garris still making no impact inside of the top 3. But in racing, it can be very, very hard to gain anything and very easy to throw it away, so you would not count anything too prematurely here. What a bizarre race it had already been, with penalties for your top 3 on the grid as they passed the pace car too early, and that's brought other drivers into this race winning opportunity. Russ Addy has brought positions up from 9th on the grid to get here though, passing John Morgan, passing Greg Garris, now looking to hold on. Race winning form in past, race winning form this season. Going to make it another one potentially here at the Nürburgring Grand Prix circuit.
John Morgan is clearly closer on this lap. He is applying the pressure, but I think it's a little bit too late here. He's going to need a mistake from Russ Addy into this final section. Russ Addy goes defensive onto the compromise line, comes back across to take the normal line through the chicane. A little bit squirrely on the brakes. It's going to be close here into the final complex. 2 tenths back. Is John Morgan going to try and make a move? He's going to look to the outside. Oh, it's going to be
checkered flags
really
waiting
close
for them, and Russ Addy might be just baiting them a little bit. He'll still hold on. He'll still take the win, but Morgan closed up on the last lap. Greg Garris did, and what was second and a half to cover all of them ends up as just 5 tenths to cover them. The battle carries on between Poole and Jack Turner into the final real braking zone of the lap. Bruce Poole looks to be in the best position there. Hardest Yorison, Mike McCormick and Randy Shoemaker have already taken the checkered flag in front of them. Here, your pole sitter penalised, going too early on the formation lap. Oh, this is gutsy if he makes a move here on the final lap, and he won't. Eugene Clark will just hold on.
As we're looking even further back, battles still going on as we look into the final chicane here and Bob Kearns spun it on the that's so unlucky on the curb again, just lighting the rears up and not really losing anything. You know, he was in 20th place starting this lap, but he'll surely be gutted not having a chance to attack Robert Love or Peter Holstrom into the final corner of this race.
Be patient every other corner, every other lap of the race, but you find yourself in that situation. You're chomping at the bit to grab the throttle, and it was just a little too much and just a little too early for him there. But again, last lap, last chicane, you've got to give it a go, and it didn't pay off for Bob Kern there. It all paid off for Russ Addy though, as it's a bevy of ones. The 1-1-1 finishes in position 1. But not in race 1. For race number 2 for Russ Addy, and he let them get just a little bit closer on the final lap there. John Morgan and Greg Garris, your podium in just half a second. And Hardest Yorison also flying under the radar a little bit to 4th place. Cormick in 5th from Shoemaker, Bruce Poole, Jack Turner, Donald Fitterer and Barry Hills. Of all those drivers who had to serve a penalty, Donald Fitterer with the best recovery through the pit lane early, but still made 9th place. Eric Block Douglas Beasley, Eugene Clark, Paul Stump, Ragnar Wisloff, Carl Bogle, Gene Moore, Peter Hallstrom, Robert Love, and Bob Kern. It's the top 20. And just a few more drivers left in race number 2. On the lead lap were Jerry Kerr and Ian Wilson. JC Hay, 1 lap down. A very, very good job. You might have seen him getting out of the way of the 3-car battle for the lead. He did not want to dip his toes in that one at all. And he let them very, very graciously through to carry on their exciting leading battle. Marcel Broining, Leif Hellberg, Joel Martin, 7, 10, and 17 laps back respectively. Pretty sure Joel Martin was playing race control today, and we saw the problems for those other drivers. A very unique race result out of race number 2, not what we would have expected having the result we saw in race number 1.
Yeah, I think it was a good race, and especially between the top 3. Like you said, it was a close battle to the end, but was it a little bit too late? Because obviously we've seen that on the last lap. If they'd been that close going into turn 1 with 1 lap to go, you know, there maybe could have been a few moves into turn 1 and we could have seen a little bit of battle. It's always one of those things, a balancing act. Sometimes you just end up being in the right position with 1 lap shorter than you would like. You know, if John Morgan had an opportunity into turn 1 with 1 extra lap, he might have been able to win this race. But it's a really good result for Russ Addy because, you know, as we said, championship leader going into this round, and yeah, it's going to really help him within the championship and when we come to watch the later round at Watkins Glen later this year or later this.
We'll take
this
the bubbly
season
out of the fridge and half pop the cork. Let's get to our podium places, and in 3rd, Greg Garris. Greg, a lot of pace for you to catch the leaders early on, but for a Grand Prix track with these style of cars, passing looked difficult.
Oh yes, definitely. Russ and John were talking a little bit about how they down the straight you could get them if you were right there close, but you had to be close to get them at the tight corners.
Indeed. Interesting race start that we had there. The top 3 all getting penalties for being a bit too keen getting around the pace car. As the race start was happening, did that look like a possibility to you, or did it catch you by surprise as much as them?
It caught me by surprise. I had no idea what happened. I thought maybe they got something injured or something, or got in a crash, you know, but I wasn't sure what happened. But John mentioned that as well. I didn't know what happened there.
Well, for future races going forward, you know to be very careful with preempting that pace car by too much. After race number 1, now to race number 2, you get yourself on the podium. How's this season been for you in 60 Plus Racing Adventures?
Well, it's been off and on. I haven't been able to do all the races, but it's been fun. They are so good to race with, fair, gracious when I make mistakes, and we are all pretty good with each other. It's been fun to work with them.
Awesome. Well, congrats. Enjoy that podium and enjoy the rest of the season until we catch you for the season finale at Watkins Glen in a couple of weeks' time.
I will, and thank you so much.
Second place man Greg Garris. I think we're going to get ourselves a double dose of John Morgan in today's 60 Plus Racing Adventures, because he is with Will Chadwick.
Hello, John. Maybe a little bit too. Congrats on your second place, but maybe a little bit too little, too late, really, at the end, because you were very, very close going on to that final lap. Ending the final lap, but just couldn't quite make that move stick on Russ Addy as he got you a little bit earlier in the race. What were your sort of feelings on trying to make that move and trying to win the race from your perspective?
Yeah, I think based on Russ's pass on me earlier in the race, he was like 0.3. He was like 0.3 behind me when we started down the hill towards the chicane. So I knew you had to be somewhat that close, and I think I was 0.4, and it was just not enough. And there were enough places where I could close back up on Russ. We were just talking about it. There were other places where he gained a couple more tenths, and it was basically the same with Greg. He'd lose a couple and then gain a couple, and it sort of went back and forth through the whole race. But it was a lot. It was a lot of fun simply because there were three of us. There was, somebody behind me and somebody in front of me, and it was a good race. It's just a tough place to sort of work up and get any chance to pass.
Yeah, like we saw, it was a really close battle throughout the entirety of the race. Ever since we had those penalties on lap one, we asked Greg previously. Did you kind of obviously starting? Hang on, I'm going to need to find out where you started now. But you started in 5th place, so you were fairly close to the front three drivers that managed to get the penalty. Sorry, you didn't start in. Where is my qualifying?
That's 4th. Yeah.
You started 4th. So the front three drivers got a penalty for passing the safety car too early. Did you consciously stay further back, or do you think you just ended up being a little bit luckier, being a bit further back and not quite passing?
I wish I could say I was that smart, but I wasn't. I was just lucky. Yeah, I knew they went early, and I did hear a message about let the pace car by, and I don't know whether I lifted at that point or not. I knew Russ was starting to make a run, so I think I just got lucky in terms of the timing of where I was.
Yeah, well, we can say it's skill if we're honest. We can fob it off and say it was skill, and that's what helped you charge to an early lead with the penalties that was given to those top three drivers. And yeah, did you find the track conditions much different to the first race? We heard some drivers talking about how the track was very slick. It was kind of slippy, a bit more like a Japanese sort of tarmac environment. Did you also find this, or did you find the track conditions to improve a little bit?
No, our races are run the way we set them up. Is the conditions are the same, just trying to level the playing field, for a lot of the guys in the midfield, and so the conditions were the same. The track is it's a little slippery, and there are a few places on that track where it's pretty easy to spin out, where the car is really on the edge. Turns 3 and 4 are always kind of treacherous, and that's what 2, 3 is what caught Paul out in the first race. So it's a slick track. It is kind of like a lot of the Japanese tracks, like Suzuka. So, but it just sort of adds to the challenge of sort of figuring it out and trying to run a pace that's going to give you just a little bit of margin for error.
Absolutely. Well, 2 good results. We've seen you in both times at this interview booth, a 3rd and a 2nd here today. We'll see you later on in the season in a matter of a few weeks' time at Watkins Glen. And we wish you the best of luck for the rest of the championship until then.
Thank you. Look forward to it.
No wins for John Morgan today, but twice on the podium. I think that can be considered a very, very successful outing. It's Ragnar Wisloff with the win in race number 1, but it is Russ Addy with the win in race number 2, and battling from pretty deep in the grid as well.
Yeah, hey guys. I'm glad you're broadcasting. As I said, I always do well when you broadcast. First race was a disaster, but I need to qualify better.
What was it that made qualifying a little tricky around here? I mean, Ragnar Wisloff spun out on his 2nd qualifying lap for race number 2. There were others as well. I think Leif Hellberg might have had a spin or two. Is those opening laps in qualifying just challenging as the temperature builds up?
Yeah, I think the tire is being cold the first lap, and it's how hard do you push, because if you get a 1x or 0, you're in deep trouble. So at least for me, I tend to be a little too safe. Can't afford to start at the back.
Well, apparently you can't afford to start in the top 3 either. We've learnt that after this race number 2. What would you say to anyone watching, thinking about joining 60 Plus Racing Adventures, other than, make sure your date of birth is good enough?
That's right. Fake your date of birth. No. Yeah. I mean, it's an
I'll grow my beard out a
incredibly
little bit, you watch.
it's it's an incredibly polite group. Everybody gives and takes. It's just I think the nicest bunch of guys to run with. So it's really nice. If they make a mistake, they apologize, and everybody's I guess not a maniac.
That could be a good selling point for some other sim racing leagues. Not only is not everyone a maniac, everyone is not a maniac. That is a point of differentiation for 60 Plus Racing Adventures. Any tracks that we didn't see on the schedule so far this season that you ran well at or you really enjoyed? I mean, we never seem to catch any of the oval rounds like Richmond or Iowa or anything like that. How do you tend to do for them? How does the racing tend to look like at those circuits?
I do pretty well, though. I think those would be a good one to broadcast. What happens is the guys that seem to be really quick on the ovals. We have an oval series, and there's guys that are very quick. They tend to rise to the top. So where some of the guys are a little slower in the road course, their skills really come out in the oval. So it's a lot of fun.
Inverse of the road course ringer shouldn't really surprise us. Another win to your name, a good handful of points. Before every race, we see that there's Stefan Röstgen with 8 titles, yourself, Ragnar, others with 2. You might be about to think about moving a step closer to the great Stefan.
It's way too early to think about that. I just want to be competitive. I'm usually in the top 4, I think, a lot of times. So it's a long way to go to the end. So we'll see how it goes.
I heard when they put Ragnar's boat in the water, they started engraving your name on the trophy.
They need to put it in a lot earlier. I know Donald's going away for a month or so that'll take some of the pressure off. Yeah, Ragnar needs to take more Wednesdays off, I think.
Was it you or someone else who got a new RV?
That's Donald. Donald got a new one.
Of good excuse. Well, I hope if sim racing isn't enough getaway for you, you'll find something at some point. But it's going very well for you on track, and you really built from race number 1 to race number 2 tonight.
Yeah, thanks, and thanks for broadcasting. It's really nice to watch yourself on the broadcast, and you guys do a great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and anyone else you want to thank while you're here and while you've got us?
Well, I want to thank my teammate Randy. He finished, I think, 4th the first race, so that'll help us with our team standings. And then John Morgan and those guys that I was racing against, Greg Garris. They're so consistent. You can trust them. That's a big factor in being able to know you can pass somebody safely.
Well, congratulations, race number 2 winner, and maybe we'll see you at Watkins Glen in a couple of weeks.
I hope so. Thanks, guys.
Always great to have a chat with a handful of our 60 Plus Racing Adventures drivers after race 1 and now after race number 2. That'll conclude everything from this halfway point in the championship, though. After 2 races from Nürburgring Grand Prix Strecker. 1 win for Ragnar Wisloff, 1 win for Russ Addy. 6 more rounds to go before Watkins Glen, the season finale, and you'll see it here on RaceSpotTV. So make sure wherever and however you're watching, you give us a follow for all the other exciting sim racing content that you can catch live as well. It's been David Haynes, Will Chadwick with me, Connery Maddock producing with the cameras, the replays, etc. Look forward to seeing you at Watkins Glen May 1st, June 1st for the season finale.